My name is Alvin Lee. I'm from the NTU Local Community Engagement Office. Quite a mouthful, but suffice to say, we are the organizers of this talk series. So to kick things off, I just want to check, all of you are here for the talk, right? Because right now in NTU, there are a lot of convocation ceremonies happening. So you didn't come to the wrong place, right? Yeah, this is the Did You Know talk. Okay, so I would like to start things off by warming up the audience, and there will be some involvement or some participation from the audience. Okay, I'll require you to put up your hand if you know the answer. I'll ask a few questions, and there are prizes if you get the right answer. Okay, so Did You Know talk series. Okay, let's start with this along this thread. How many of you have been to our talks before? This Did You Know talk series. Okay, very good. Okay, keep your hands up there. Keep your hands up there. You have been to our talks. How many of you have been to 5 or more? Keep your hands up there. 5 or more. Oh, very good. Okay, let me just... No, keep your hands up there. If you have attended 5 or more. How about 8 or more? 8 or more. Oh, very good. 8 or more. 10 or more. 10 or more. Okay, we have a gentleman here. Okay, let me come to you, yeah? Sir. Can you just quickly introduce your name and how many talks you've actually been?
My name is Willie. I lost count already. I think it's already more than 1 year I've been here. Yeah, it was actually monthly, every Monday, and only this month you changed to quarterly.
Thank you. You need any more proof or not? Thank you very much for your ardent support. Thank you, Willie. Okay, so we have a second question coming up, okay? Maybe he has the advantage, but I will not go back to Willie, okay? Because he attended, lost count already. So the second question is, out of the many talks, right, do you know how many? How many did we actually organize? Did you know talk series? Anybody care to guess? I'll give you a hint. We started in 2017, second half of 2017. And we did not organize every month, as Willie has said. Okay, we skipped certain months. Anybody care to give it a shot? 20? I hear 20. I hear 25. 22. Wow, sir, can I ask for your name?
YC.
YC. Okay, so do you think 22 is what we have already organized, or does it include today? Include today. Congratulations, sir. I don't know whether... Thank you very much. I don't know whether you got it by lucky. Did you actually guess it, or you have attended some and you estimated the number?
I attended quite a few.
Okay.
22 is just my luck.
Okay. You're very lucky, sir. So can I just ask you further? Can you name 3 topics that you have attended? Can you?
There's one on Confucianism. Okay. There's one on 3D printing, and this one. The earlier ones, it would be a bit hard to recall, although I've taken note in my books. And I think, yeah.
Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Okay, could you add maybe 2 or 3 topics that you've attended?
I think there's one on cryptocurrency, all right, and there's also one on, I think, sports science. Okay, and one on, I think, by Professor Wee, I think the business one.
Yes.
Yeah.
The famous Professor Wee talked about 孙子兵法, right? The art of 孙子, art of war. Very good. Thank you very much for your contribution. The last one is a giveaway. If you had paid attention to how I introduced myself, can you actually tell me who organizes this talk series? Don't tell me NTU, tell me the office. Look around. You have to strain your eyes a bit. Maybe a little bit below the banner. Okay, that's where I come from, and where Alicia, my colleague there taking photographs, come from. Give someone else a chance. Oh, we have a lady finally. Okay, lady. Correct, local community engagement office. Thank you very much, ma'am. Can I ask your name, please? Madam Yong, congratulations. You got our office name correct. Okay, thank you. So this is actually the 22nd of our talk, and today we have a very, very interesting topic. Okay, just line up for you. We have interesting speaker and also 2 panelists who will also share their views with you later. So I'd like to introduce Professor William Chen, who is the Michael Pham Chair Professor in Food Science and Technology with the School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering. He is also the director of our Food Science and Technology program in partnership with the Wageningen University and Research from the Netherlands. So Professor Chen's research focuses on platform technologies for food tech innovations, food waste valorization, green processing technology, natural food preservatives, among others. So such innovations have attracted significant interest from the industry and lots of investment as well from the food industry and government agencies. So this includes the there's a recent opening of the F&N NTU Innovation Lab. So Professor Chen has been regularly interviewed by the media. So you might have seen him on CNN, CNA or some of these programs. So he is actually someone of an authority in this area. So we are very lucky to have Professor William Chen. Over to you, Prof.
Check, mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check.
All right, is it better? Great, great, okay. Today I'd like to share with you some of the issues related to Singapore national food security. I'm sure you have seen, you have been reading and watching a lot of news report about this new development. How important it is, well, I cannot claim that I know everything. So we have with us two distinguished guests. One is Professor Ben Smith. He's from A-Star, also our adjunct professor. Please, let's welcome Professor Smith. Yeah. So when we talk about food, university, we don't produce food, right? So we need, A-Star do not produce food, so we need food industry. Therefore, to show that what we have been talking about, what we have been doing all these years, have relevance to our daily life. So with us, we have also a leader from the food industry, Mr. Barnabas Chan. Yeah. So I will share with you a little bit of overview, and then our distinguished guests will also share their perspective, so that you will see, you will have a more holistic view of the food security aspect of the facing Singapore, right? Okay. All right. So what is food security? If we ask the general public, people will say, oh, as long as we can find food, then we have enough sufficient level of food security. Actually, it's more than that. What you see here is a definition. I mean, everybody knows the definition. So it's to provide readily available and safe food of appropriate nutrition, right? at an affordable price. Okay, so though these keywords are very important. First is available. Do you find food readily available in Singapore? Easily, right? Are they affordable? We're not talking about modern steakhouse, of course. So usually it's affordable. Are they nutritious? Yes, right? You can say yes. Are they safe? Or on and on, we see some, food poisoning cases, but that's not related to A-Star or to NTU or to Sophie's Kitchen, right? It's more of the handling hygiene issue sometimes, right? Okay, so on the next slide, what I would like to share with you is that Singapore food security, is it a problem if we actually see all these 4 parameters well placed in Singapore? So is there a problem? Well, this one illustrates the potential problem we may have. Okay, so everything goes by ranking. Singapore, everyone must be number 1. So we are number 1 again here. Global Food Security Index, we are number 1. Yeah, of course, this is not government's claim. This is a survey done by The Economist. Yeah, it's a very reputable magazine, right? So I start reading more because usually I find the article quite boring, but since we are ranked number 1, I start reading more. Okay, you look at our ranking number 1, but as for every ranking, there's always a set of criteria, correct or not? So what is the criteria? Affordability, availability, and quality and safety. So we are ranked number 1. But are there issues? Well, if you look at Singapore, people talk about Lim Chu Kang here and there, but by and large, we only have less than 1% of land for agriculture, right? Okay, so the rest of the food, where do they come from? In fact, you may know that we import more than 90% of food for local consumption from more than 180 countries. So unlike water security, we rely on one single country. Food we import from 180 countries. So do we have a problem? No problem. I like that. Okay. Actually, if you read the newspaper, you see yesterday or 2 days ago, the weather is extremely hot in Paris, 42 degrees. Can you imagine that? In the US, there was this heat wave also sweeping the whole country. So what does it mean? Extreme weather conditions, climate change. What's the impact on the food? Well, obviously the traditional farming, the primary production will one day, sooner or later, will be affected. So we may reach a point that even we have money, we cannot buy food because exporting country, they may want to keep food for their own population. Correct or not? Yeah. So if we consider this vulnerability of dependency on the external factor, external environment, our ranking dropped to number 16, even lower than NTU's ranking. We are number 11 in the world. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is something we need to really take a step to address the challenges. So recently, you may have read in the news that the government is pushing out a very ambitious plan called 30% of nutrition requirement from local production by 2030. Have you read this part? No? 30, we call it in short, 30 by 30. Yeah? So which means right now our primary production capacity is about 10 to 15% for local consumption. The idea here is that within the next 12 years, we push up to 30%. There's a lot of work to do. So if you look at the limited land space for agriculture, how to? So people talk about increasing the yield by GM food, but GM crops, now everyone likes GM crop, right? People don't know what's inside, right? GM crop. It's a lot of perception thing. Yeah. So what can we do to increase the primary production yield? You look at the HDB flat, used to be, a terrace house type of thing, right? After that, 5-story, not enough. 20-story, not enough. Pinnacles at the Duxton is what? 50-story, right? So it's the same idea. We go vertical, no space, we go vertical, right? Correct or not? So as a result, we have seen, I'm sure those who cook at home, you have tried this sky green vegetable from the supermarket, right? That's a result of vertical farming, right? So that's one area. Okay. So I jumped a little bit too fast, too enthusiastic. Challenges for Singapore food security, SG stands for Singapore, shrinking farmland. Okay, you look at the left-hand side, the 3 images. In the 1960s, we have about 25% of the land for farming. The green area is not a forest area, it's a farming land area. So then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said we should not just eat to live, right? Wake up, eat, then sleep, the next day repeat the same thing. We need to drive the economy. So first thing to let go is farmland, because we made the calculation of, not me, the government then made the calculation. It's actually quite efficient, cost-effective to import food instead of producing food, right? Okay, so over the years, you can see that the green area getting smaller and smaller. In fact, there's an interesting story. The pig farm were first to let go. Why? There's a reason for that. The pig farm were first to let go. Why? Not because they're smelly. Yeah. Because what? Exactly. Very good. So the pigs discharge actually dirty the waterway. We already have no water, still let the pig dirty our water, so cannot. Must let go first. Okay. So as we move on, you can see that the bottom figure is 2015. We still can see the green area. Now we hardly can see any area on the map. Singapore already so small, you can't even see the green farming land for agriculture. So there's a big issue, right? The second one, that's the first challenge. Second challenge is food waste. Do you know how much food waste we generate a year? This is not a figure I made up from internet. It's a government figure by AVA. Then AVA, now SFA. You know, this number very hard to correlate. It's actually equivalent to 15,000 Olympic-sized swimming pool every year will fill up so much. You know, yeah, okay. So that's a big issue because in the US or in France, they have a pig farm. They still have pig farm. So you just channel some of the food waste to animal farm. In Singapore, we already got rid of pig farm, right? So where does this food waste go? We burn it, and then we send for landfill. Yeah. So there are 2 issues here. One is energy consumption. Yeah. The second one is capacity for landfill. Yeah. So all these are not very optimal for the future development of Singapore. By the way, we generate as much plastic waste as food waste. Very scary. But then you cannot tell consumers, don't use plastic bag. Then people say, use what? See, we have a solution. Later I'll share with you what we have developed as solution. The third challenge is aging population. I'm so happy to see so many young faces here, but by and large, it's an aging population, right? People have no time to date, no time to get married, no time to have kids. Yeah. Okay, but a lot of time to eat. Yeah, okay. That's a separate issue. Okay, all right. So what is the aging population? That's not a problem, but it's actually affect the food production. We need to present the consumer with food that they like. You know, old people like me, when I go out with my kids, we never agree on what to buy, what to eat, right? So its appreciation level is very different. So we need to address these issues. So there are 3 challenges. Okay, some of the solutions. Okay, one is the primary production. Yeah, I already mentioned the smart farming, urban farming. This is one solution, but we actually can see that urban farming is nothing wrong. Yeah, if you look at the traditional farming practice, what do? industry scale, very large area, large volume, but what is the drawback? Very far from the city. So they need to harvest early, store them for a long time, and transport to the city, right? So there are a lot of wastage also. So smart urban farming actually is actually the trend. Although Singapore, coincidentally, we do not have enough farming land, so therefore we develop urban farming. It's not wrong, right? But we are not farmer at NTU, unfortunately, so I cannot share too much of the farming innovation here. Besides the primary production or traditional crops, what else can we look for? What else can we look for? Alternative food source. So therefore, our Sophie's Kitchen is here to present the future food, to make sure that it's not a science fiction. We actually have a real sample here, prepared by our friend, Mr. Chang. 3:30 in the morning, this morning, he sent me an email. How many do I need to prepare? I say, as much as you can, huh? Okay. here he goes, right? Okay, after my talk, we'll have a sampling session about this future food. Processing technology. I find that this is a very important area. First, to reduce food waste. Second, to reduce pressure on food import. Because why? It's like when you cook in the kitchen, you on the tap, you don't use the water, so you have to continuously on the tap. Whereas if you maximize the utilization of water, and in this case, we maximize utilization of food, available food, then you don't have to import so much, correct? So reduce pressure on food import. The third one is nutrition. I will also let our distinguished guests to share their perspective. Yeah. So food safety is very important because why? No matter how much food you produce, how fanciful they can be, if they are not safe, no one will buy it. So therefore, our distinguished guest, Professor Smith, will share with you how exciting food safety can be. People talk about food safety, very scared. Is it dirty? Is it clean? Should I eat or not? But he will share with you what is the future development on food safety, which will make our life more enjoyable. Yeah. Okay. So I think I need to speed up a bit. I was so happy that I'm less slides than Mr. Chang, but actually I'm a bit too slow, right? Okay. Okay, since NTU is focusing on one area, we can't claim everything under the sun. There's no focus, right? We focus on the food waste reduction. So this one shows us the distribution of global food loss and waste. What is called food loss? What is called food waste? Traditional farming would lead to a lot of food loss, right? Because transportation, spoilage. So before, for example, we import so much vegetable from Malaysia, Cameron Highland. By the time they reach immigration checkpoint in Singapore, 30% of vegetable gone already, right? Because these are long distance, transportation condition, all this. So you can see that you already have an idea. South and Southeast Asia is growing, right? It's growing, right? Food loss not as much as food waste, not as much as food loss, but the circle is quite big, right? Sizable. A type of global food loss and waste. Yeah, these data not come from me, from FAO. FAO stands for what? Food and Agriculture Organization under United Nations. Yeah, okay. So it's a very credible source. So you can see that at agriculture production level, wow, so much loss already, right? And then the processing, packaging, more waste generated, and distribution, supermarket, more so. So if we can actually maximize the reduce the food waste and maximize this availability of primary production, we'll have much less problem. We don't need to rely on GM, all these other things. Plus the future food, we are very safe, right? So here, after this session, I hope that besides enjoying the fantastic future food, you also see hope in the future, right? Okay. This one a bit, just to sort of get some common sense out of us, right? Okay, food loss, okay. Processing, edible mass loss from processing. One example is, so I will not go through the list, later you will work out already before the future food sampling. One example is edible mass loss from processing. One example, what's the example? I can see two. One is ugly food. Yeah, you know what is ugly food is? Ugly food is at the supermarket, they get rid of this edible stuff, but it's a bit off color, a bit short, a bit too long. They say, oh, no good, no one will buy. That contributes a lot to the food loss. And then, so food waste, oversized meal. Oversized meal, we are very familiar. Singapore is part of our culture. We don't have a museum, we go and eat, no stop. What's a convenient way of eating? Buffet, dinner, right? No stop. There's so much food waste, you know, oversized meal. And so these are some of the examples. This is an approach to reduce food loss. Again, I will just pick one example. Production level. Improve access to infrastructure and market. Urban farming is the best. What is called urban farming? In the city, close to consumer. That's the way to go, right? So the food produced will stay nutritious, fresh, and affordable, right? Okay. Second one, handling and storage. Improve infrastructure. Make the truck move faster. No need, like Singapore is so small. We talk about urban farming, no problem already, right? Because it's so close to supermarket. Third one, processing and packaging. Improve packaging to keep food fresher. Meaning what? If the packaging is no good, then the food gets spoiled faster. If we can improve packaging technology, the food shelf life will stay longer, then we have less food waste, correct? Facilitate increase donation of unsold food. This one we already seen food bank, this and that, right? In Singapore. So there's already some good practices in Singapore. Consumption. Okay, all the things we need to improve. Improve consumer cooking skill. That means, I think in my own experience, I cook a lot. So it's don't buy too much from wet market to supermarket. Then you put in the fridge, you open again, all spoiled already, right? Okay. Reduce portion size. Don't need to eat too much, okay? Eat ugly produce. So a few years ago, there's this gentleman called Tresham Stewart. I don't know whether you know him. He visited NTU, and he is actually a British, he's activist towards raising the awareness for food waste reduction. So what he has done, he organized a lunch for 5,000 people in London. Yeah, to cook what? Ugly food. Those things I mentioned, off color, short, too short, too long. So he cooked for 5,000 people. So Singapore, we like to learn from the good practices. In other way of saying copycat. Okay, so we try to replicate the same thing in the city square. Only 2,000 people, 200 people turn up. So the awareness is not there yet. So what we need to do is to educate the public, educate the kids, educate the consumers to pay attention to the food waste reduction. Okay, so we have this program. Now we come back to must promote ourselves a bit. So I would like to share one small video clip to show you that how simple food innovation can be and how much it can impact on our food industry and the consumers' benefits. All right. This one is only 30 seconds, so you don't worry. This is about durian seeds. See, just cut. Boy. Okay, so I only cook at home. So simple innovation comes from NTU FAC program. So I'd like to sort of thank Dr. Justin Lee, who is here at the back. Can please stand up? Who is behind this innovation? Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so now as we move into food waste, you can see that when we talk about 15,000 Olympic-sized swimming pool of food waste, these are household food waste, restaurant, buffet dinner, yeah. This is very messy. So how to develop innovation? Very difficult to scale up, correct or not? So one day you receive a power from Chinatown, next one from Little India. It's very heterogeneous, right? So very difficult. So we focus instead on the side streams. What we call side streams? Side stream is byproduct. Like soybean go to Unicurd, beancurd come out, then no one sees what's behind. Left behind is a soybean residue we call okra. So we generate this 11,000 tons. I will not convert into Olympic-sized swimming pool anymore. Okay, but it's a lot lesser than the general household food waste. Second one is a Bureau spent green. What is spent green? You know, when the APB make tiger beer, they put in barley, they let barley germinate. Yeah? Then the sugar we use to feed the yeast, yeast make beer. Then the pour barley green, dump, right? Okay. So what we do, what the industry has been doing is to pay for mover to move this soybean residue and Bureau spent green to Malaysia to feed the animals, right? So a lot of waste resource. How can we tell it's nutritious? I don't know whether anyone has seen soybean residue. Anybody? Soybean residue. They get spoiled overnight. That's a good indication that it's very nutritious. You look at a chair, never get moldy, right? See, no nutrition value, right? Practical value, but no nutrition value. Soybean overnight, it gets spoiled. Means what? Microlarvae. Means what? A lot of things to eat. Yeah. Okay. So the other one is waste cooking oil. I will only use soybean residue as an example to show you the simple innovation can create wonders, right? If you look at the bottom one, our food innovation also follow the Singapore economic development model. Make money out of everything, right? So we have developed this petrochemical industry based on what? Import crude oil, process, fine chemicals, export again, make money. Food waste, what can we do? Right now in the school, what do they have? Biodigester, make compost, fertilizer. It's very nice, but the kids will know, maybe I should not waste food, right? But in terms of economic scale, it's not there. So we're talking about value add to this from this food waste, right? So packaging is one, food ingredient is another one, and fine chemicals, of course, here we're not talking about chemicals from food, more like high value ingredient like carotenoid, those kind of things, right? So one example, I need to support my colleague Alvin Lee say we're always sometime in the news, so we do appear in the news, right? Okay, fermentation technology, you can see that the soybean residue, they are very rich in the component, right? Protein, very high, 30%, fat, 12.8%, and so on. But you still also have this insoluble fiber, 40%, very high, right? So what we have done in the lab, all the team members are sitting at the back. Later I would give them a round of applause again. So we use fermentation, very low cost, right? Fermentation, everybody knows, kimchi, nattos, what else? All kind of thing, yeah. Okay, so we use food grade and no GM, because we're scared of GM, right? Okay, so what we have done is that we show that fermentation product is very valuable. How valuable it is? Well, you can see from the Business Time report, companies are working with us to develop probiotics. Ice Cube, you see that next year on the market, right? And Jessie again, right? Jessie is sitting at the back. No need to stand up now, okay? Because we can see you on the photo, right? Okay. So this is how we convert this soybean residue into a yeast culture medium. Then you may ask, what yeast culture medium? What are you talking about? This is a basis for our HB vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine. Everybody knows, right? All the school kids, they have received the HB vaccine. It's produced using yeast, yeah? And we have a big factory here, I think, a manufacturing plant, right? So our fermented product can replace yeast culture medium at a fraction of cost, 10% of the current cost. So that will save a lot of money. You may recall that we have 40% of insoluble fiber in the soybean residue. So if fermentation cannot do everything, otherwise people outside Singapore will have it done already, right? So 40% of the residue will stay there. If we don't do anything about it, we are not really solving any problem, correct or not? So we have developed a simple, again, one-step extraction method to take the cellulose out of it and then convert into, you see at the bottom, the cling film, right? Cellulose convert to cling film. And it's truly biodegradable, right? Meaning what? What is called biodegradable? You put this one, right? Put it here. This is, of course, it will not disappear, huh? But if you use our material, you put in the soil, after 1 month, you don't see anything. That means biodegradable. Of course, if this one is made of biodegradable plastic, you put it here, they will not disappear after 1 month. Otherwise, you come, hey, where's the water? Yeah, no. It's, you need to be in contact with a microbe, right? So what you see here is that we actually close a loop using one example of food side stream. So we call it zero waste food processing. A few years ago, I was sitting on the government committee for food security. We were scratching our head. That was in 2014. Scratching our head in 2030, what should we achieve? But now, of course, government pushed out this 30 by 30, so they know what to do. By that time, what should we do? Zero waste food processing. 5 years later, at NTU, we have achieved this. Yeah, okay. Then one is a food waste reduction. The other one is a prevent food waste generation. You must go both ways, right? Because otherwise you have a hard time to cope with food waste generated. So here we have developed this natural food preservative. It's a fantastic, it's a fantastic invention. As I say, I don't praise myself. Since I cook, my researchers do the innovation. So I would need to thank this Guan Rui. Come, please stand up. Xiao Mei. Where's Xiao Mei? Xiao Mei is there. So these are the inventors of this innovation. You can see them on the photo. Okay. These are the natural metabolites which are present in all the plants, all the vegetables. And we have a way to sustainably produce these. And in fact, they work much better than the current chemical preservative you find in processed food. What does it mean? Is that we will have prolonged shelf life of food produce, and it's healthier because no more chemical preservative. Isn't it fantastic? Yeah? Okay. So you can see bright future. Of course, Mr. Chang, I'm not sure whether you put any our natural preservative into the sandwich. Oh, that's a message on your 3:30 a.m. email. I forgot about that. Okay. All right. So this is summary. I know you're hungry. Me too. Therefore, I'm a bit disjointed, right? Okay. 2 layers of technology innovation. First, fermentation. Simple, right? You just put micro incubate. Then the nutrient will come out. And then the green extraction developed biodegradable packaging material. So we close a loop. As you know, Alvin just now mentioned our FSC education program is together with the Wageningen University of Research. Who has heard of this university from the Netherlands? Wow. No more? Good. They are actually ranked #1. Ranking is very important. Ranked #1 in the world in the area of food science and technology. But how come we don't do things that they do there? Because why? Because you go to the Netherlands, everybody is 2 feet taller than me. The me there, yeah. So very difficult. So why is this so? It's a built-in cheese out every day, I mean, milk and cheese every day, not milk in, cheese out, huh? Okay. So as a result, they are very, very tall, which is a reflection of difference in the diet, yeah, in the diet and the nutrition profile. So we cannot do things they do, then we're totally copycat, cannot. So we do things that are relevant to Singapore food industry, right? So when they see this, they love it, because Dutch, they say, circular economy, we love it. So now we collaborate a little bit more in research. Now talking about Dutch, here you go. Who has not watched the movie The Martian? Who has not watched? Oh, okay, now you see. This Matt Damon is about this gentleman, Matt Damon, astronaut. He was stuck on Mars, right? So he needed to grow potatoes. Remember the movie? Yeah. Actually, this movie was inspired by research done at our collaborating university called Wageningen University and Research. You see the gentleman there? There? Okay. The one I took photo with, he looked exactly like Matt Damon. He said, no. His brother looked even closer. But his brother is not Matt Damon. He said his brother lives in London, looked 99%. I find him 80% at least. So he actually developed this technology to grow herbs using different soil conditions. One is, what you see in green is the herb, Ricola. So he grew on Mars, he grew on Moon, he grew on Earth soil. So the question you asked, actually I forgot to ask him, where do you get this soil from? Do you go to Mars? No, only Matt Damon went to Mars. Okay. So actually, they are advisor to NASA. And NASA give the feedback to them with all the soil conditions. So you try, of course, it's not for fun. What's the implication? Implication is that one day we may convert the desert into farmland. Fantastic, right? Even though Singapore, we don't have a desert, but with all these extreme weather conditions, you will never know. So I took a photo with him. Then people say, are you sure you didn't copy from internet? So I want to show just click on the, no, just click here.
They are good. And if you
it's
want
Dongbalik. Sorry, it's actually to show that he's really there. So the tomato that you see here is also the technology they have developed. So this university is pretty good in innovation. So why Matt Damon grew potatoes on Mars, not the other two? Copyright issue, right? They already developed this thing, so you have to grow something else. But that's a side joke, right? Okay. So we got inspired by this. Go back to that slide. So we got inspired by this innovation. And now, of course, just now I mentioned the future food would be a good alternative to meet our requirement, right? Because weather conditions change, all this kind of thing, would ask us to think out of the box. So we're talking about eating insect. Who dare to eat insect here? Have you ever tried insect? No? Yeah, very good. I mean, in a few years' time, I will see everybody will try this. But why do we promote insect farming? Yeah. You talk about raising a cattle, a cow. 50% of the feedstock they eat inside to keep the body warm. Yeah. After that, they grow in mass. So it's not very efficient. Whereas insect, why insect is good? It's cold-blooded. Eat virtually anything. Yeah. So in time to come, we're not encouraging all the consumers to eat insect in Singapore, right? We're talking about insect protein as a potential alternative protein source. That's a different thing, right? Okay. But beyond insect, we have other fantastic future food. So I will end my talk here. Then I will let Mr. Chan either to let you eat the sandwich or first listen to his future food. It's up to him. And after his talk, we'll let Professor Smith to ensure you that what you're eating is safe. Whatever you'll be eating will be safe. Yeah, okay? So thank you very much. I think I have overrun a little bit.
Okay, so Mr. Chan, would you like to say a few words first? Or
I think we'll continue.
continue your talk first?
Yeah, yes, yes.
All right, so can I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Barnabas Chan?
I think it's okay. Thank you, Prof. William. Very honored to be here. Actually, I graduated from NTU. It's good to come back to this place. Yeah, my name is Barnabas Chan. I'm part of Sophie's Kitchen. And I actually was in the pharmaceutical industry for about 23 years before I ventured into food. Because I think like all of us, we are all in one way or another passionate about food. And I think if we think more about the things that we eat, or we pay more attention to it, right, you will really change the world. First of all, you change yourself, and then you change the world. I think it is time that we take more notice about what we are eating. So I was tasked to talk about future of food. It is a big topic. It's very difficult. So I just zoom into a little bit of it. Yeah. Okay. First of all, to introduce Sophie's Kitchen, have some advertisement time before you all eat. And okay. I prefer to let all of us finish the talk, and then we will have more time to take the sandwiches and interact. And then after Prof. Ben's talk about food safety, then you decide whether you want to eat or not. Because it was made like 3 o'clock this morning, right? No, that's not true. It was just fresh from the kitchen. Yeah. Okay. That's not true. Okay. Okay, we are the first food tech company using patented disruptive technology to develop 100% plant-based seafood alternative. You have a lot of like beef patties and chicken patties and all this, right? But not a lot of companies are into alternative seafood. Okay, alternative seafood, we made it out of plant, basically pea protein and konjac. And all our ingredients are natural and non-GMO, and even for the seasoning, it's all natural seasoning. So the next slide, I can tell you that this, how we all started this. The founder of this company, CEO Eugene Wang, discovered that 10 years ago, his daughter is allergic to seafood, okay? So as a good father, right, he said, oh yeah, can't eat seafood and all this. What will he do, right? He comes from a family that makes vegetarian food, 3 generations of them all make vegetarian food. So he was saying that why don't we use our technology to make something for Sophie? That's how Sophie Kitchen started. And it started with a lot of love, So he is swear by using good natural ingredients and into his food. So just coming back, the next slide, coming back to the topic of food security. So to me, food security, right, is to make sure that I have food to eat. That's to me, secure your food. No, but there are more things than that. I think you would have gotten all these messages from Prof. Just now in his talk, but just for me to briefly go through it again, right? There are threats that is coming to us that take away our source of food. First of all, population is increasing to 10 billion, by 2050. That we do not know how we can have enough to feed all these people. Urbanization, 70% of people will be living in urban land, which means there will be lesser farming facilities. Farm supplies has to increase, but you know that as farm supply increase, other environmental issue will come in. And then furthermore, Prof also mentioned climatic change. Climate change, the yield of crop will go down, and water resources, you do not know that. I don't know whether you know that most of the water goes into feeding your plants for food, So a lot of water is spent actually on our crops. And furthermore, we have an enemy, biofuel. There there are these oil guys, the oil giant were saying that, don't plant food, plant oil, Yeah, So there is all these things that are snatching away food from us. And the thing is that, with all this food, going away, that's why you see people are hungry. But the irony of this thing is that there are still people who are obese, right? Like, yours truly, But, so that's why, for me, I personally believe that, is a personal belief that God created this world to have enough resources. It's actually how we use it, how we deploy the resources. Although we say that 10 billion people, wow, we cannot feed them, right? But it's how we deploy them. So going to the next slide is that, so men try to solve food issues. The first picture you see, right? Men started hunting, okay? Wow, so very good. Then they discovered that they can plant, so they started farm. Do you know that with every thing that you discover, right, there is actually a problem that arises from it. So when they are hunting, right, they have a balanced diet, because today what I have, I eat, But when they started to plant, right, they started only to eat that potato every day, and then soon they become like a potato, So the problem arises, because of all this. And then you have GMO or non-GMO. It's controversial. If you say that you don't like GMO, right, you will see that the world will be even hungrier. If you don't have GMO, then there will be not enough food to feed the world, actually. Yeah, at least those people think so, yeah. Okay, and then a lot of people like to order food online and all this, right? Now it's the trend. These are the trend and all this. But what problem comes with it, we do not know. You know what is the problem? You generated a lot of food waste. You generated a lot of packaging waste. Everybody package one small little thing. When you can go to the restaurant, eat, and they wash the plate, right? But now everybody is packing. And then after that, they throw away the styrofoam box. So Singapore's food waste or the world food waste or packaging waste is going to increase double or triple because of all this trend. And I like to eat beef, okay? But I can tell you the amount of resources that you need to get 1 kilogram of beef, right, is a lot. You take 1 kilogram of beef, right, you need like 6.5 kilogram of crops to feed the beef to eat 1 kilogram of beef. So would you think that it is an efficient way to feed yourself protein? So that is the argument right now that people are thinking about. What is the most efficient way of feeding yourself? So that's how we begin the next slide, our search. Because people were asking Sophie's Kitchen, now you make plant-based seafood. Is your plant-based seafood as nutritious as the sea, as the fish in the sea? But the answer is no, okay, because we use pea protein, and pea will never be like the fish, okay? So we began this search, and we found microalgae. The fish eat microalgae. So why do we eat the fish, the surrogate, instead of why don't we go right into to just eat the algae? So that's how we begin to search further, and we found this strain of algae that, stay on this slide first, that can be grown in fermentation tank. So it does not need sunlight. And it grows very fast, 3 days, and we can harvest it. And the algae itself has 60% protein. And look at the chart over there. It shows that our algae protein has more essential amino acid than the WHO recommended essential amino acid profile, and also some of the fish in the market. So we call it sustainable urban protein. Next slide. Okay, look at this slide. It says that if you want to get 1 ton of protein from beef, right, you need 141 hectares of land. Even for your pea protein that is very efficient, right, you need 5 hectares. Guess how much we need to grow microalgae protein, 1 ton? That amount, that dot. Can you see? Yeah, and again, yeah, 1 ton of protein needs 0.02 hectares of land. So that is very efficient. We are finding more and more efficient way of feeding ourselves. The next slide. So it needs very little water. Like just now, I told you that water, 75% of water is being spent on feeding your, growing your crops, right? This algae, we need only 2 to 5 liters of water to grow 1 gram of our protein. So, and then furthermore, 90% of the water is being recycled. So you can use again. Yeah, next slide. It needs 3 days to grow. Pea, you need 20 days. And beef, you need 1.5 years. Next slide. So we talk about being urbanized, right? Our protein can be grown in a very small space, and it can be right close to the city, you know, next door to the shopping center, and we can build, yeah. So we cut down on agricultural and transport requirements, so that 13% of, almost 25% of greenhouse emission is being cut off from there. Next slide. So these are some of the things you can make with, because the ultimate end product is protein flour. So this protein flour can be made into burger patties or fish, and you know, yeah, and put in your supplements. Yeah, that's about us. And I mean, we are not just trying to sell you things because it's not available as yet. We are still trying to grow it, okay? And what are some of the other things that are used to ensure that we have enough protein? You know, like lab-grown meat. How many of you have heard about lab-grown meat? Have you tried? Yeah, it's very expensive, you know. Yeah, that's, I think when it first came out was like $300,000 for a piece of beef steak, you know. So then recently a Singapore startup, Shiok Meat, said that they are going to make like $5,000 for 1 kilogram of their shrimp. That is fantastic. You know, I come from pharmaceutical. You know, this is the process that we grow, you know, those monoclonal antibodies, the drugs and all this. So, but our drug only need like 1 microgram, and we sell it for $4,000. You know, and this, you want to eat it, right? I think we will have some way to go, you know, to lower the cost, so that, you know, so food security is also about affordability. So the next slide. What are some other things like vertical farming? So vertical farming is going to be big. You know, they are going to build like even buildings of vertical farming. It is a good solution. I am for this for Singapore, but I may not go into this business because I think there are not enough people to sell my vegetable to. Yeah. Okay, but the next slide. So Prof talked about insect protein, right? So I give you an idea of what it's all about. Cricket, mealworm, waxworm, black soldier fly. Do you dare to eat all this? Yeah. You can try, but generally Asians are more exposed to this, because you go to Beijing, you go to Thailand and all this, right? They eat cricket and all this, right? So I think we are quite familiar. So the next one is just to sum up, what will then the future food be? There are alternatives. So basically we are talking about in view that food is becoming scarce, although I don't really believe in that. I say it's a allocation of resources, right? So we must know how to reallocate our resources. But food is a very taste and cultural and thing, right? You know, I don't eat because I want to survive. I want to enjoy. I want to eat it with my family and all this. So taste is still utmost important thing. And affordability. A lot of us think that food is very important because I want to produce it. But if it's so expensive, right, then, you know, why produce it? So affordability is another issue. But truly what we need to think about is everything that we do, right, we need to think about whether it's sustainable. We cannot create a business that's destroy the environment. That's the core as a businessman, right? we are a new generation of people that we think that when we start a business and we make a product, right, it should not destroy our environment, and it should be nutritious. We cannot destroy people as well. So to me, these are the two fundamental which I highlighted, because if I destroy my environment, they have no business. I destroy the body, right, then there's no customer to eat my product. Yeah. So what will be affected? I think the way we grow, the way we eat, the way we live, connecting people, and our role in all this ecosystem is going to change and towards the, how we sustain this environment. So the last part of it says that, there's the government is actually quite important to regulate all this, so that you don't make sure that the wrong people go into business and do the wrong thing, right? Yeah, and create a dangerous product. And this is my last and favorite slide. So the thing that when I look at food business, right, I always think that we should eat our food as medicine, because if you eat well, you will grow well and you will live well. There's one saying that says, if you don't eat your food like medicine, right, you will eat medicine like you eat food. That's terrible. Yeah, so I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chan. Okay, so next I'd like to invite Professor Ben Smith to share with us his perspective on this area. Professor, please.
Great. Thank you. I'll try and be quick because I never like to be standing between someone and their food. It's a very dangerous position to be in, so I'll try and be the microalgae of the speakers and get this done as quickly as possible. A lot of what has been already said today strengthens what I'm going to be talking about, but I come from a safety background, food safety, chemical safety, and a regulatory background, so you can say, oh, this is going to be boring. But as was mentioned in the last slide, a big part of getting acceptance of all of these sorts of technologies is being able to bring them to market, and a big factor of that is the regulatory environment that we're in. And one of the big focuses here in building the Singapore food safety story is actually making sure we have the right regulatory processes in place to ensure that we can bring these foods to market. And so we heard from Professor William and from Mr. Barnabas Chan about a lot of interesting types of foods, and I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, could I eat these foods? That's the same sorts of questions that the Singapore Food Authority and people like myself are also asking. And so just as a summary, I think it's quite good to sort of see where does food security fit in. As both speakers before me said, there's a lot of factors. There's the affordability, there's the availability, there's the safety, which I'll talk a little bit more about next. But the sovereignty and people's choice is a key one, and I think we tend to forget that role of what is the choice, how do we assure our safety, how do we make the choices for ourselves? And that's one of the big questions for Singapore, because we do import over 90% of our food. We are bringing food in from different legislative environments, from different environments which have different processes, and that all impacts how we look at the authorization to bring food into Singapore, whether it's bought here or made here or sold. So if we jump to the next slide. We talked about what is food security, what really is food safety, and I don't think we have enough time to get into all of this today, because I would argue that food safety is a lot more complex in itself. It's a whole did you know series. But typically what we do know is that unsafe food leads to a multitude of issues, whether it's food poisoning as a result of bacterial contamination, whether it's a long-term chronic effect like cancer as a result of chemical contaminants, or things like PAHs, benzoapyrenes, those sorts of compounds that form when you burn your meat. So food safety is all about how you cook, or through to things even like physical contamination in processing. As we go to urban environments and we go to new types of growing systems where we're using different types of structures, where we may be growing our systems in hydroponic plastics with new types of fiberglass. What happens when those systems wear down? What sort of materials leach out of those products and can get into the food system? There are all sorts of questions that with the changing food environment, food safety people have to start thinking about, and we have to come up with ways to look at this. So these are just a few thoughts that I wanted to raise today, particularly to this audience, to think a little bit about the regulatory environment and how it does impact our thinking about food security and food safety, and particularly pose the question, is the future of food safety aligned with the future of food security, both globally and particularly here in Singapore, where we're all living and eating? And as you've heard from both speakers, we've heard about a lot of amazing and interesting ideas. And that's one of the things about innovation. Innovation's great. Singapore is a very innovative place, but innovation happens at a much faster pace than the generation of regulatory and safety science. Safety scientists and risk assessors like myself, we like to be very sure of ourselves. We like to cut down on uncertainty. And when someone asks me, are these sandwiches safe to eat? I ask myself, well, how long have they been sitting out here and what is the temperature in this room? I do see that there are plastic gloves there to hand them out, so I think we're all good to go. But with some of these new foods, we have to ask ourselves about how do we understand whether these new proteins are actually going to cause allergy? How do we understand whether taking microbes from sources or plant extracts, where do they come from? Could there be contamination of those sources? Are they cleaner? All of these sorts of questions raise different areas for food safety scientists to look at. It was also mentioned about this balance between compromising food sufficiency versus stringent food safety measures. If we want to be successful in meeting Singapore's goals of 30-30 by 2030, as Professor William mentioned at the beginning, we need to make sure that what we build into our food safety systems actually enhances the ability to get these foods to market. And in the past, it was mentioned about pharma and drugs. People always look at the benefit of drugs. When they look at foods, they're always worried about, is it safe? They won't take something that's unsafe. However, people tend not to think about the benefits of food when you're looking at an assessment of bringing it to market. And so one of the things that we're actually talking about and trying to bring into more of the regulatory structures and the novel food frameworks here in Singapore is understanding the benefit of food, doing a cost benefit risk analysis to make sure that we're looking at both sides of the coin. There are a lot of benefits of eating food that can definitely outweigh some of the risks, and some of the risks can very much be perceptual risks, as was mentioned with regard to things like GMO. And then finally, an area that's a particular of interest to mine, and one of the main things that I'm here working on in Singapore is the perceptions of people towards food safety, and particularly towards some of these novel foods and new foods. So it was mentioned about eating insects. It was mentioned about eating cultured meat. Who here wants to eat insects and cultured meat, and what's the reason behind that? Is it because you want a healthier alternative? Is it because you're against animal testing? Is it because you're against using animals for food, veganism, vegetarianism? There is a huge push nowadays from consumers towards how companies actually produce their food, how they look at their food, right down to the level of how they test it for safety. And we saw these changes very much in other chemical sectors, like the cosmetic sectors, where there's been a lot of ban on testing on animals. But we're now seeing a much bigger push also into the food area, where companies are being named and shamed on the testing of these materials. And this poses a lot of issues for food safety scientists and governments and organisations like the Singapore Food Authority, because how do we test all of these new foods when we can't use some of the old methods or the animal testing methods because people don't want us to use them? So we have to actually come up with new methods of testing, and that's one of the things that we're also looking at. I think we can jump to the last slide. So I'll finish off here and let people get to their sandwiches. But what I did want to raise is that because of this big push towards innovation, because of how Singapore is looking at trying to be the leaders, be number one in generating food, future foods, in bringing the ecosystem here to Singapore, we can't forget the big piece of regulatory science. We can't forget the big piece of regulatory review. I was talking before this meeting about the different processes in different countries, and we have to take that into account as well when we look at it. How many of you think that the US actually approves food to go onto the market? Okay, that's good to know, because in the US they don't actually officially approve food. It's a voluntary, or not really voluntary. The companies have to do an assessment, but the US FDA does not actually give an official approval. In Europe, the European Food Safety Authority has to give an official approval. In Singapore, the Singapore Food Authority has to give an official approval. So the regulatory review is a key part of getting to market. And so one of the big parts of the Singapore food story that the Singapore Food Agency, A*STAR, and NTU are working on is how do we build this regulatory science? How do we tackle new ways to test food ingredients? How do we bring that into policy and guidance? And importantly here, how do we build the talent and the capabilities for Singapore to meet this ecosystem and meet this new food space? And so you'll hear more about this. I can't say too much about it now because it's under development, but you'll hear more about the activities of the SFA, A*STAR, and NTU in this space and how we're going to be building out some of the regulatory science frameworks for the future and for the future of food, so we can all be eating, everyone in Singapore can be eating these sandwiches that you're going to be tasting next. So on that note, I'll let the sandwiches be handed out and questions asked.
All right, thank you, Professor Smith. Okay, so we do have the sandwiches for you to sample. We have students who are like helping to serve. So may I just remind everyone as you proceed to collect your sandwiches, please be careful when you are kind of coming down from the steps and going up. So take your time. We have a little bit of time to sample, and while we get the panel ready for the question and answer. You want to try as well? We like to seek your help. There are actually bins set up on the left and right hand side, close to the middle exits. So when you finish, please throw your litter over at the bins provided. Thank you very much. We do have another serving station here on my right. So for the queue that is formed at the back, I think the queue here is shorter. So you might want to kind of like move over to the other queue instead. So it cuts down your waiting time. Okay, it seems like most people have already had a chance to sample the tuna sandwich. So may I just invite everyone to take your seats so that we can get on with the question and answer. Yeah, I'd like to invite the panelists to the front. Can I invite Prof. William Chen, Mr. Barnabas Chan, and Prof. Ben Smith right up to the front? We get ready for the question and answer. Can I invite everyone to please take your seats? Okay, so the next segment will be the question and answer. I do have two students who will be assisting with a roving mic. So in case you have questions, just raise your hand, stay where you are. The student assistants will come to you and pass the mic to you. Okay, so I appreciate if you could actually, to give everyone a chance to ask questions, please keep your questions concise. And if you have a specific person, you may direct the question to one of the panelists. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the moderator, who's Professor William Chen.
Okay, I actually don't know what to say. I mean, we will try to make it very interactive. Let's invite the first question. Yeah, please.
Hi, thanks for the talks. It seems that some of your problems, the problems that Singapore is facing with regards to food security, are behavioral in nature. Your solutions have all centered around technology, technological innovation, supply chain management, operations, and things like that. Can you comment a little bit about any behavioral solutions that you're thinking about?
You're referring to consumer behaviors?
It can be, for example, this resistance to eating insects or food wastage. All these are behavioral problems in nature, right? It's not so much of a food production problem. Consumption is a problem. Food resistance is a problem. So these are fundamentally psychological problems, but is there a psychological solution to that?
Well, since I'm the moderator, I'll pass on to our guest to start with.
Okay, I can't comment on all the behavior, but you specifically mentioned about insects and all this. How do we convince them to eat, right? Okay, I think it is not up to us, actually. It's up to those people who run the business, right? The government will not try to make you eat cricket, but it is the person who started the business who will entice you to eat the cricket protein, right? So it's like any marketing thing, they will try to change behavior like this. But I think in times of when you have no food, you may eat it. You like the tree bark and the roots, and if we do remember those kind of things, yeah.
We'll make one comment from the government side, and one of the things that's being looked at, particularly by the Singapore Food Agency, they do have a big group that looks at communication, and they're cognizant of consumer perception. And I think that's one of the key things that what they're trying to do is show a little bit more clarity in how they look at and assess the safety and security of the food that's coming into Singapore. And one of the reasons that there's not a lot of questions currently here in Singapore is because people do have a lot of confidence in what's being eaten. And I think that with some of these new technologies, whether it's alternative proteins or things like nanotechnology, which is a big one and a big area and big industry here in Singapore, is that what we need to do is we need to get out there and be proactive and talk a little bit more about it, so we nip in the bud the thing called perceptive risk. And we actually look at more the actual components and we talk about it. And so rather than people sort of assuming that these things are safe and following standard approaches, we're actually pushing more towards what we call safe by design, working and talking about the benefits of the eating and the food. And a big part of the Singapore food story actually is going to be building in, under one of the research themes, a consumer perception component to it, to actually start looking into this and how we can do both support the consumer's need for information, but also how we can manage the misperceptions so that people are remain confident in their food supply.
Prof. Smith's talk is extremely high level. I just use a very simple example. I understand. Innovation simple, answer very simple. Doesn't mean that he's wrong. It's very high level. I need time to digest. So one simple example is we look at consumer behavior towards food. If you look at potato, not Matt Damon, potato, hundreds of years ago in South America, sorry, is used to be it's not a staple food. They actually use it as a decoration to the yellow flowers. And then because of the food crisis, then they start planting tasty potato. Actually, they find it's very easy to farm. And then nowadays it becomes a staple food. So this is one simple example.
I think my other example is that I think the first person who eat crab and prawn, right, they are very daring. It looks ugly, right?
Hi. I've read that genetically modified food is not very safe to eat, but you have mentioned that it is otherwise. Can you elaborate?
Moderator is passing on the message.
I think the food safety expert.
Yeah, no, I think what you have to look at with a lot of these genetic modifications is understand that most of the time what people are trying to do is develop something that's very similar to the proteins that we're eating now. And so you're not really doing, in many cases, major changes to the organism. Also, many of these proteins and things that we eat, they break down in the stomach, they get degraded, and then they're taken up into the body in forms that are non-active. And so whether something's GMO versus normal protein source really isn't the question. It's the same with some of these natural preservatives that Professor William put up earlier. Are they really safer than other chemicals? It all comes down to understanding the dose, how they interact with the body, how we eat them, and what they're doing. And so, in essence, yes, they're something a bit different, they're something new, but in most cases they're very similar to, we're trying to design things that are similar to known proteins anyway, because we're trying to mimic something that we're already eating. And so, in my opinion, they're safe. In my opinion, they have a lot of benefits as well. If you can feed the hungry people, if you can grow things in an environment that is susceptible to heat degradation, these sorts of things, you actually have a lot more benefits. But we still need to do it in ethical and controlled ways to test how we're actually developing these proteins. We don't want to go in and do crazy things. Now it's even getting easier to do this with technologies out there. You may hear about CRISPR soon being used in different types of applications where you can cut out bits of genes, put in different genes. And so we're eating, Matt Damon's eating normal potatoes now. Maybe we would be eating potatoes with a whole beef stew growing out of the same organism. We don't know, but we'll see what comes.
I think from a pharmaceutical perspective, all things has to be proven in long-term safety studies, and I think so far we do not see any actually adverse publication, right, on GMO, and like what Prof has said also that some of these processes are actually beneficial to create a plant that uses less water and grow faster, and but of course the GMO has a definition as the level of what they modify. I think there's a kind of definition. So there are some safety regulation that is in place. I guess maybe you can elaborate more.
Has anyone here eaten the Impossible Burger? Okay, so the Impossible Burger actually has as its base a leg hemoglobin. So it's a plant version of hemoglobin that gives it this metallic, meaty taste. So it's like the hemoglobin in blood. And when you smell blood, it has that metallic taste. It also gives it the red color. So that's a material that was produced through various genetic manipulations. And to get enough protein of this source. So we actually assessed it to help out with the Singapore Food Authority, and we compared it to a whole lot of known proteins. It's very similar, and we also compared it to known safety assessment methods through different types of approaches. And it's interesting when you look at proteins and allergenicity and these sorts of things with some of these approaches. A good sort of 60% of the proteins in the human body, if you actually looked at them compared to allergenic proteins, would be actually quite similar, would score as allergenic, yet we're not allergic to them. So there's a lot of understanding that's needed here, and I think it's generating the science so that we don't have the fear factor of these materials. But there are a lot of materials starting to come on the market that are very safe, being manipulated in certain ways, but have a lot of benefits, and no undue safety data has been generated.
So another simple perspective, don't worry. Right now on the market, I believe soybean and corn, they're all GMO already, right? And when we talk about growing crops which are resistant to pests or weather conditions, for example, rice, we're not talking about eating the whole thing, right? We're just talking about eating the rice. It's the root and the stem which are resistant to weather conditions. So depending on which part we're talking about. Maybe I can invite the audience, some of the prominent experts. For example, Mr. Kang is a science teacher from Raffles Institution. Maybe you can offer some perspective.
Thank you, Prof. Chen. Hi, everyone. My name is Zachary. I do have a question. I heard from Prof. Chen a moment ago about extreme weather condition. As a chemistry person, I'm of course very mesmerized by fertilizers, like Haber process was voted the chemical reaction of the century. Because of that process, it increased the crop yield by many folds, and we were then able to support Earth with that many billions of people. But now that you mentioned we are maybe expecting some kind of extreme weather condition, what is the impact of that climatic change on the crop yield and food yield? Because I'm concerned about that as a chemistry person. Yeah, is that something that we should be worried about?
I don't think I should pass the question to to my guest. Okay, I think moving forward, technology-driven farming will be one of the solutions, but not all the solutions. For example, urban farming, indoor farming, all these will make our farming practices resilient to the environment, including the weather conditions.
I mean, right now we are talking about industrial chemicals, the fertilizers. They are able to produce, the kind of crop yield that we want. Are there alternatives to that, like natural fertilizer? Is that going to be some coming into major play in the future?
I think one of the simple way is, I think I mentioned in one of my slides, in terms of value chain for the food waste conversion. At the bottom is actually the conversion into fertilizer and compost. We have so much food waste, that could be one of the solutions. But I don't know everything, all the answers, so I will let my guest.
See, another complicated answer, or the simple answer is yes, there are. Since you like to give simple answers. No, I think also one of the things that you find with the industrial chemical sector is that they're actually looking at how they can take the types of chemicals that they're using and use them in some of these new farming systems as well. And so a big push is getting down to more potent, better delivery of chemicals, so we're actually using less. We're targeting where those chemicals need to go, so we're improving the growth of plants quicker and more robustly. So I think how we deliver some of these chemicals is actually some of the new technology that is going to improve it. Naturals are chemicals like any other type of chemical. There are certain natural fertilizers that people are looking at. Yet again, the biggest difference is between, and it's the same in the drug industry, drugs are very potent versus some of the natural supplements. So where people are looking at is how do you boost the dose, delivery, how can you get them into forms that are going to get to the plant roots easier? And I think that's where some of the technology advances will come to push natural fertilizers further.
And increased use of industrial fertilizers, which are chemicals, can lead to pollution of some kind, and that will be counterproductive, right?
Sure, and big companies like Syngenta and Monsanto and Bayer and things at the moment are actually looking at how they can change their chemicals, but also how they can make them break down better, so putting different types of chemical structures in to make it break down better, silica particles people put in between organic molecules to make them fall apart, make it easier for the bacteria to get in and chew them up. And so I think it's not so much that we're going to see in this day and age a lot more new chemicals and things coming on the market. I think what we're actually going to see is how we actually produce many of the types of chemicals and chemical structures that we have in ways that are more efficient, using more circular economies, and also in how we deliver them so that we can actually give a bigger punch for the amount that we're putting out in the environment.
So I'd like to add on that when we talk about organic farming, right, actually, do they use pesticide or fertilizer? They do. It's just like they are more easily degraded.
It can be broken down easily. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much for tonight's talk. As you have started the presentation about nutrition, basically I noticed a trend that, there are many commercial companies coming to have meal replacement products, and they are very, very hot and trendy and buying in a lot of young people to say that, you know, this is highly nutritious. And, you know, how can someone who is not trained understand exactly what nutrition is and whether it is a good alternative or whether it's just a commercial gimmicks, or how do we actually, you know, be good in identifying and, you know, don't saying they are scam or they are, you know, good for us. And they say it's fast, so you just shake, and then you go out, and it's easy and it's very costly. And many of them are going into this industry saying they can make extra income as well. So in that sense, I mean, it's not really talked about in today's topic, but it's about how you understand nutrition and how you identify, you know, whether this business or has, you know, is it a solution, or how do we do understanding about this? Or yeah, yes.
Before I offer my simple answer, I'd like to invite the sandwich maker to compare his sandwich with a Subway sandwich, yeah, for example.
Okay, I think what you asked essentially is actually in all countries there are very strict food regulations. They have regulation on how you should label your products, and you also will be assured that the basic labeling are actually there. So I think for us, industry or consumer group or the regulators, they should educate the consumer to read the label. Okay, I think that's what they are doing. But as for consumer-wise, they should be rest assured that, you know, you have a regulator there to look after this. And I think the other very simple answer for this, right, is that you can buy it once, and if it works, you know, you buy it again. If it doesn't work, you throw it away.
So the part about working, it's a lot of culture and brainwashing of the company that is behind making them vibe up, that it's working, and they have a lot other means to make them go into a competitive exercising and nutrition and prizes to say that they lost weight within 3 months of fantastic outcome. So they have many other behavioral changes that come together with that product, with the exercise, with that brainwash, and they go into it as if that it is the way or gospel to their nutritional, quick fix or whatever kind of thing. And they sell many success stories. So the kind of, you know, are we misunderstanding what all these products are, or could there be, you know, an underlying thing that, you know, make them so successful in the way they drive their sales, which is very crazy, that I see many of them using it as a means to make income, means to, you know, look good, and then very trendy, and a lot of psychological things that come in that make them think that it's nutritious.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid point, and it comes down a little bit also to the various ethics and legal structures and things that are in place. It's not easy. People are trying to push a product, but I think it's one of the things that the food industry itself is doing a lot of work to cut down on, this idea of fraud, and in the it all comes down to compliance and compliance structures. Here in Singapore, actually, you have to have very specific data, and you can only label certain claims. There are actually claims that you're not allowed to make. The problem that we have is that we are bringing in foods with labels from a number of different countries, supplements you can buy on the internet where they're not regulated, and so consumer beware. And so where efforts of going, the HPB are playing a big role here. They're actually going to be looking at mandatory nutrition labeling, which helps. SFA looking very carefully at claims and labeling procedures. And people also have to look and be a little bit careful in understanding some of these sorts of things. If you've got a food that's made out of, I don't know, peach and banana extract, and it's going to decrease your weight. First of all, let me know about it, but then why not eat a peach and a banana? So I think there needs to be some talking and things on this sort of area.
I think just a short sharing as a business person, right? I can tell you that SFA is doing a lot of work. Because a while ago I was trying to put a claim on my label on another product, okay? And I have a lot of scientific studies and some even done by myself. I mean with our own team in our lab, and we have published papers and all this. And they just do not allow us to label on it. Yeah. So that's how strict our Singapore government is.
Okay, my simple answer again. So moving forward, I think 50 years down the road, we'll see two trends in opposing direction. One is very sophisticated, precision nutrition, how the genetic makeup will influence your nutrition profile, everything. The other one will be all natural, insect, microalgae, everything else. So I think the trend that what you see now, the boom of a wide variety of new food is actually healthy because it gives a consumer a wider spectrum of choice. But whether you want to join the long queue now or later, that's also personal choice. So if I were you, I would just wait for the hype to subside. Like for example, you go to Jewel, the Shake what? Shake whatever. No queue anymore. So just wait, yeah. And then if you worry about the nutrition label, right? Just two categories, very simple: macronutrient, micronutrient. The rice is all hype. Yeah. Got to moderate. We encourage more questions, maybe from this side of the audience.
Yes, how, good evening.
Oh, wait,
Over here.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Okay, I'd like to ask you the question about this. Those as an Asian population, so most of us will be on medication. So your food, according to him, there are so many chemicals. So how do we know which can take, which cannot take? So this will go to the interaction with the drug medication and so on. So it will cause the sickness become worse. So could you advise? Thank you.
Okay. I start first. Sorry. Okay. So when I promote our food science and technology program, later will lead to the answer to your question. I always compare the three jobs in Singapore and elsewhere. First is a medical doctor. Second is a lawyer. Third is food technologies. Yeah. So what do lawyers do? Dig out evidence, someone can murder, someone got met in an accident, whatever, right? So it's a lot of sort of working in the past. What do medical doctors do? Crisis, firefighting, someone cut his leg, whatever, right? Fall from the high building, yeah. What do food technology do? Yeah. So first one, why someone get murdered? Because someone else is not happy, right? So it's a depression. The mind is not sound. So food technology, we design food that make people happy, proper nutrition, and then you don't need lawyer, we don't need doctors anymore, right? Of course, no one buy my story lah. Only my kids, but they are not moving into food. So sad. Yeah? But okay, come back to answer to your question. With the aging population, actually now we are trying to promote the idea, the food as a medicine. I think Mr. Chang just mentioned this one also. I let him continue.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I firmly believe that what you eat, right, is actually will help you to live a better life. We have to watch our nutritional diet and, regarding, what to eat and what not to eat, whether you're allergic or not. I think right now we have enough knowledge about allergens and what will be the contraindication if you are a diabetic or you have heart diseases and that kind of thing. So based on all this basic knowledge, right, I think the body is quite resilient. You won't, one day you eat a burger and then you will fall flat, that kind of thing. So I think it's not so easy. Yeah, but I would strongly suggest that we mind our micronutrients, the kind of fats that you are taking, and the amount of, in fact, I think one of the key problems with people nowadays, right, is the amount of calories that we take in. We are not farmer actually, so we actually don't need to eat so much food. Yeah, so yeah, I mean general. I don't know whether I answered your question, but.
No, I think it's a growing concern of chemicals in the environment and aggregate exposure everywhere, but it all comes down to the saying of like the dose makes the poison and how much are we taking in. And one of the things with food is that you've got to look at it as it's self-limiting. We're not gorging ourselves on a whole lot of food. It's how, okay, some of us like myself eat probably a little bit more than we should, but you can only take in so much. You're eating it and so the important part with regard to nutrition and diet is taking in a balanced diet and taking in those foods in proportion. And so not just eating, if you're eating solely just processed food or candy, you're going to be getting too much sugar, it's going to lead to health effects. If you're eating a balanced diet across the food chain, you're going to be bringing in all of the things that sort of moderate that as well, help you balance and take up the sugar. You're also, if you're in an environment where you've got a good, strong, safe and secure environment that's testing for antibiotics, testing for heavy metals, benzene contaminants, those sorts of things, you're also not going to be getting those entering into your food chain, so you're reducing your risk there. So I think it's a whole mixture of things. It's not easy to say on one or the other, but it all comes down to balance, proportion, and looking at it as a long time exposure across the diet as well.
Mr. Chang just made a very interesting suggestion. If anyone from this side asks one question, there will be limited supply of the sandwich, tuna sandwich.
Ask a question for the sandwiches.
More questions, please? Yes, Mr. Gentleman.
Hi, Marcus. I have two questions actually. So the first one is more for Mr. Barnabas regarding the microalgae that he talked about just now. So I just want to understand, like, how is this different from the current protein, soy or whey protein powder, since the main, for consumers' point of view, the main selling point would be the high protein proportion in it. This regarding the environmental aspect of it. And the second question is more general. So in view of the current, in the midst of establishing the food regulation for, say, cell-based meat, is there a lot of risk for food ventures who are exploring this new food tech innovations? Because imagine if they invent a new meat, but it eventually isn't approved. So is there a lot of risk to, in this area?
I think both questions are for me, right? Okay. First of all, the micro algae protein, right? It's going to be, there are many different sources of protein actually. You can extract protein from pea. You can extract protein from even a cow hide. You can extract protein from many things. But so what essentially it is for the microalgae protein, right? At the end of the day, we measure, I show a chart that, that there is the level of essential amino acids that's inside the protein that is as good as what you can get from other source of protein. So I think for that, right, you know, the nutrients is there. As for absorption and all this, we do run tests like, you know, lab tests on protein absorption level, bioavailability, to ensure that there are, you know, some proteins are not so readily absorbed, but generally we try to ensure that our protein are good quality protein. And in the process of pushing out the product, right, we concentrate the protein to a different level, either 80% protein or 90% protein, or lesser, maybe 60% protein. The rest are the fiber, the carbohydrates, and whatever. Yeah. So I mean, that's how we ensure our product quality and and all this. Whether it's different from other protein based on the amino acid profile, is the same. Okay. But based on absorption level, there are a lot more science to this. I think,
So all comes down to the level of risk. And here in Singapore, there's a lot more flexibility to work with the industry to come up with the right process. So the processes aren't fixed. And so what they're actually looking at is trying to understand what's the best data, what's the best process, and they're actually talking in a tripartite fashion. They're talking with consumers, they're talking with academics, they're talking with the food companies, so that they can come up with a solid approach that benefits all players and, most importantly, maintains the safety for the consumers. Unlike some other countries like Europe, where it's very stringent in the approach, and so the risk actually starting here is a lot greater. The GRAS system in the US, you could argue, is a lot easier system, but the GRAS system is under attack because it's a self-regulated system, and so it's the company putting up data. And there have been some questions raised with, not so much with some of the proteins that are in there, the structure of the proteins, but how you present them. So some of these micro proteins, microparticle formations and processing actually can lead to more uptake, and there's been some cases of allergenicity and things. So people have to start asking the questions. There's always a risk to a new product, but the advantage here in Singapore is that the government and the SFA are asking the questions alongside the industry and trying to make sure things move to an endpoint that benefits everyone.
I have no simple question anymore, simple answer anymore, because we are running out of time. Maybe last question. Yes.
Valuable information from all of you. I have two questions. Professor William Chen, from your great invention from your research, I want to ask this question. This is related to the natural preservatives finding in durian seeds. What was your motivation to look into the durians, not like other seeds like rambutan or mangosteen? Another question related to the lab growing meat. Professor Chen, so this is a couple of months ago I read news in that is BTI is spending a lot of work in lab growing meat, and you said that there is a, so far the price is very high for lab growing meat. So what are the parameters taking in bringing down to the price? So these questions from my side.
Okay, why durian?
Yes.
We all love durian, yeah? Until I eat so much durian in Malaysia recently, I almost pass out, yeah. But okay, that's beyond the point. In Singapore, we consume how many? 12 million durians a year. You know, it's a joy for the consumers, a headache for NEA, right? So much durian heart, so much durian seed. So why we focus on durian seed? Actually, we take it as another example how we can actually reduce food waste. if you analyze, do simple analysis, you know that durian seeds are very rich in certain component. That's why we tackle this component to take it out, value add. And how about durian husk? Actually, I did not mention, but our team, a fantastic team, also had developed a technology to convert the durian husk into biodegradable packaging materials. Yeah, so this is a motivation is to reduce waste. Yeah, I couldn't understand the second question. Maybe you have an answer.
I was just going to say, I think the real answer to that first question was that William's wife was getting sick of all of the durian seeds accumulating at home, and so he brought them to the lab. Yeah. On the second question, which is on what are people doing on clean meat and to try and make that bigger, there's actually as part of the Singapore food story, there's going to be a big focus on alternative proteins, under which certain groups are already starting to do some work in this area, but there will be a push for more grants and research for people to look into this sort of area to stimulate progress. But one of the key areas that people are looking into is how do you actually improve your culturing processes. So how can you get more cell biomass with less nutrients, smaller bioreactors, and these sorts of things. And so the BTI process units at A*STAR are doing a lot of work in this area. There's also a lot of work going into how can you grow, once you've got the cells, how can you grow them better and quicker in an incubator system into more meat-like products. And so a lot of work is also going into structures that you will then grow the cells on, frameworks, to actually improve growth and speed of growth so that you get the biomass. So people are starting to do that. It's not my area, but there are a lot of people starting to think about all of those sorts of points.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I think that's already a very good answer to your question. Yeah.
All right. I think we moderator hand over to Alvin, the organizer.
All right. So thank you for all your questions, and we cannot thank the panelists enough. So I'd like to present on behalf of the organizer, I'd like to present some token appreciation for the three of our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the workshop. Please give them a big round of applause, our panelists.